listening to the Debug Podcast.
Hey, you listening to the Debug Podcast.
Hey y'all, you're listening to the Debug Podcast.
This is the Debug the System Podcast. Specifically, we've been having a series that we've called the Discrimination Playbook, which is essentially a series documenting, reflecting, and having conversations around the impacts of bringing the Super Bowl and FIFA and national and international sporting events to Santa Clara County, and the impacts that that's going to have on San Jose and the most vulnerable folks in San Jose. So that's kind of the basis of these conversations. This is our second conversation around this, and in this one we wanted to talk more about the implications of ICE potentially being in Santa Clara County for the Super Bowl, and that's, as we're recording this, that is in about 2 weeks from now, and then and that's not even to say leading up to FIFA in the summer. And there's some March Madness events happening here. So this is not just an immediate thing, but something that could, extend for most of the year, this year, given all the sporting events that are happening here. Okay. All right, so let's jump into it. So just to start the kind of foundation for this conversation, to start it, like, we already had fears. We know that Super Bowl coming has implications of increased displacement, more sweeps of unhoused people, more arrests, policing downtown, all the kind of implications that come with it. But we had talked about as early as like November, December, the concerns of this also being an opportunity for federal ICE agents to come to Santa Clara County in relationship to these events. And then just recently, I don't know if it was earlier this week or last week, but we had Peter Ortiz, who is a San Jose City Council member, say that from his sources that there is a real possibility, or that there will be ICE agents coming here as early as the Super Bowl, the week of the Super Bowl, in 2 weeks. So I guess to start the conversation around that, of course, that is alarming and upsetting, but also ICE agents have already been here. So I guess just want to open it up, the conversation that like what this, it may look different when they come this time, but it's not that Santa Clara County has been absent of ICE presence. So I guess just to toss that up, if folks want to talk about or what does that look like, ICE being here since the Trump administration has taken place in 2025?
I think here, like you said, Andrew, I think locally we already know that it's happening, especially with with some of the families that we've been supporting too, and I think it's been brought up too in the news that they are targeting also our local jails, specifically Elmwood, where people that are coming out, they have ICE waiting for them right outside the doors. Yeah, just earlier this week too, through another family that we're supporting, and a person that is actually inside right now has let us know that just this week somebody that was released was picked up by ICE. We've actually been in conversations with county council as well to try to see why the sheriffs are letting ICE into the jails when, based on our policy here, we're not even supposed to be engaging with them. We shouldn't be allowing them in the what is it called?
Like county facilities.
Yeah, county
facilities,
buildings. All that. So, yeah, and as of right now, they're just saying, well, they're not engaging with ICE, or they're just giving out public information that's accessible to everybody. But, they're not actually impeding ICE from getting this information or trying to make it even harder for them to try to get this information.
And maybe if someone wants to give the context too of like, what do we mean when ICE is not supposed to be in county buildings? Like this is a long history of a policy that DBUG has been a part of in terms of creating in this county. I don't know if anyone wants to give any history around sanctuary policy here.
Yeah, I mean, like this idea of like cities or counties, like, and really decoupling that relationship with ICE and like making sure ICE does their job and we don't have to do their job for them. That's been kind of like a long history here in our county, and then we've been kind of a national leader in setting that tone. And it all started back in 2008 when, like, you know, all these like resources were trying to get put in. Really part of like the whole effort to make ICE more of a criminal operation or criminal enforcement and stuff versus in making and having counties do their job. And so, you know, we back then into 2008 to 2010 and stuff, our county was really strong and stuff, and DBUG was really for us, like, we were like really in the mix of that because we had folks who were in the jails, who were in the prisons, who were the most vulnerable to be transferred to ICE. And so it was really trying to create the most progressive and protective detainer policy in the whole nation that then became a model for other counties to follow and stuff. And it was really saying, like, look, if you're gonna, that county should not be doing the job of ICE and stuff, that folks should not be, like the county resources should not be used to facilitate any ICE transfers. And it really came from, you know, kind of like similar to what's going now, all this like anti-immigrant rhetoric and stuff. Like there was a lot of things that were brewing back then, like in Arizona when Sheriff Arpaio was trying to like arrest folks and stuff. And, you know, our county who are immigrants and stuff, or not even immigrants, but just looked non-white and stuff. And so and our county was like, you know, we're not going to do business with Arizona. It's like, okay, well, that's one thing, but it's like, what do we do to actually also protect our folks inside? And so that's always been the impetus and the spirit of all this. And so you know, so we created this detainer policy. It was modified and challenged like 3 times, and it still stands as of today, and it's been a model for other folks. And so that is why it's alarming that, you know, ICE has been in our jails. They've gone to the courthouses and stuff to try to get information and stuff. They're at the check-ins and you know, trying to really get, you know, these, quote, target arrests, which in itself is such a it's kind of like a smoke and mirrors term, because it's like really everyone's at risk when that happens and stuff, not just that person. And so to kind of just put that out, that like, oh, you know, when there's an ICE sighting, oh no, they were just going for one person. It's like the whole family's at risk, the whole community, the neighborhood's at risk. And so yeah, but like our in terms of the sanctuary policy, our, you know, our county has been has had that policy since 2010 and stuff.
And that's what makes it so like egregious that they're just walking into Elmwood County Jail to pick people up. Like that, you know, at least our understanding of that policy, right, is that that's not supposed to happen. You know, or there's supposed to at least be barriers between the ability to do that. And you know, and just like in that spirit too of like, you know, not just picking up folks outside of Elmwood, the county jail, which if, you know, just to clarify for folks that are watching, you know, they talk about they want to pick up the most serious and violent offenders, but anyone that's being released from Elmwood is a low-level offense, maybe even a misdemeanor, like to where those are the folks that are being released. This is not the kind of theatrical cases that the federal administration says that they're targeting. But it's not just Elmwood, right? It's they've also just yesterday They were at the clerk's office, at the courthouses, off of Heading, gathering information on people. Probably that's the assumption, is that they go to the clerk's office to see, pull records, all that kind of stuff, to see who they can try and grab. And then there's also the ISAP office, ISAP office. I don't know if anyone want to talk about the ISAP office real quick, but when I discovered it, could not believe that it existed, and then like where it is. It's in the South Side next to Oak Grove High School. I think it's an actual medical office building, and it's like this like independent contractor office that essentially does like oversight, right, of folks that are on bond or under monitoring of ICE. But folks have been picked up there as well. Anyone that has a visit to check in has to go to that office. And given the circumstances of everything, it is just like anyone at any time, if they step into the office, feels like that it could be their time. I don't know if folks have any additional thoughts or comments on that, or talking about the ISAP office.
Yeah, I think it's just crazy how it's in the middle of a bunch of other little offices. Like you said, it's a medical office right down below, and up and the second floor upstairs, there's like probably next to it's like a dentist office as well. Once you go into that little waiting area, you have 50, 40 people, checking in, and essentially all the people downstairs getting treatment for their medical services. Little do they know, people upstairs are getting detained by these ICE officers.
And when you go into the lobby too, like it'll have a directory of what's in there, but ICE isn't listed on there. So it's like, it's really interesting how like this juxtaposition of like there's a lot of public activity of what ICE is like, which is like this, which they are. They kill people, they go and terrorize neighborhoods, they kidnap 5-year-olds and stuff from their preschools. But at the same time, they're also very discreet and stuff. And so just like that ICE office in Southside San Jose next to Oak Grove High School. So I guess part of it is like not to buy into that, that what an ICE officer looks like isn't just Jonathan Ross or, because there was another young man who was killed in LA, Keith Porter, and by an off-duty ICE officer. And so, and it doesn't just look like that. It looks like people who are hiding in a medical building, So.
Yeah, and just to add too, like ICE also takes the form of the San Jose Police Department, despite what they say, because if any interaction with local law enforcement leads to an arrest, and any arrest leads to an incarceration, and any incarceration is a waiting room for ICE to come get you, then essentially local police are ICE officers, because they're serving the same function. And so that's why, like, locally it's almost bizarre to hear the political leaders take kind of performative stances against ICE in the press conferences, how they're going to protect our immigrant communities, but then invest in expanding police, and not ever taking on the battle where it occurs. Like Norelli was saying, before there was, all this new awareness around the extreme violence of ICE and the attention, and even when the Super Bowl stuff was still kind of the plans were being developed, ICE was going in and picking people up at our jails. As of now, we asked the sheriff 2 days ago, there's been 44 people picked up from ICE. And so this has been happening quietly, like Sharice was saying, but really, like, nakedly too. Like they're not hiding that they're going to the jail and picking up people. They're doing it in open, and they're essentially saying, okay, someone stop us if you want to. And our political leaders that go on social media and these kind of press releases about one county, one voice, and make all these statements, even show up at our rally, not our rallies, but immigrant rights rallies and stuff like that. They know what's happening and they won't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we had a conversation with the board of supervisor, and she was just about to give a press conference around how the county's protecting immigrants. So we asked her, "Are you going to bring up what to do about the jail?" And at that time, it was early on. There was 9 people that were taken, and her response was, "Well, 9, that's better than 900. And that's happening in other places. So you got to give us credit." And just essentially refused to acknowledge that ICE is doing its thing here in San Jose. And with the Super Bowl, like what you all talked about in your last podcast, we're going to see increased police, even if they're not wearing ICE vests, they're doing ICE's job.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the concern is more real and larger than the bravado coming out of local political leaders' mouths.
Sure. And I think that that's like it's definitely the how we see it, right, is that this is, ICE coming is not a new thing here, right? Like, it already exists. And I think that would be some of the message to folks that do want to that watch this and want to be informed about this, is that the fear of that kind of Armageddon dissension of ICE agents, although is very well may be real, very well may look the way it looks in other parts of the country, it's not as if they're not already having impact on immigrant communities here in Santa Clara County.
Yeah, and it's taking different forms, right? So like all these issues that seem different lead to the same place. So when the city's response to houselessness is to do sweeps and to vanish people, they're ostensibly doing ICE's job. So like there was like an organizer, friend of ours that is advocating with unhoused people that have been living in the camps, sent us photos of a recent sweep that happened 3 days ago, I think. She said, Sean Cartwright.
Yeah.
And it looked like an ICE raid. It was a sweep of an encampment behind the plant shopping center, and all there was left was these remains of like paperwork, like even like warrants and things like that. And so police came in, no notice, and just took people, charged them with trespassing, and saw if they had warrants. And that absolutely is an immigration issue, because we were told the majority of the folks there were day laborers at the local Orchard Supply. So those sweeps, given the green light by Matt Mahan and the police department, is an attack on immigrants, as much and as real as what we see, like say on the streets of Minneapolis.
Right.
It just has a different process.
Right. And with the Super Bowl coming, those sweeps are increasing.
Yeah.
And policing is also going to increase. We talked about this in the last conversation about San Jose curating the look of downtown San Jose through its police. Who they target, who they pick up, who they harass, is essentially trying to create the environment in which city leaders and businesses would like this to be for our out-of-town guests. And one of those things too that we were talking about too is the increased use of like 148s. These kind of just, I'll let you guys let you explain it, but essentially the use of like arbitrary charges and reasons and excuses for stops and yeah, and just like you said, like all of those, if that person is an immigrant, can lead to the same consequences. Do you want to talk a little about, Pastor Raj, about we tried our best last time, but explaining what a 148 is and kind of just like how it's used, the nature of how it's used, because it's not anything that is it's not an actual charge,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, so 148 is the penal code number for resisting arrest. And there's a misdemeanor 148, and there's a felony level resisting arrest called a PC 69. And they all are in the same school of this idea that you could get arrested and face, consequences for resisting the arrest. And so normally I think the idea is that there's an assumption that there's an actual arrest for an independent charge happening, and during like an officer effectuating that arrest, something happens that then adds a resisting arrest. But what we've seen happen here in San Jose, like how that weapon of police is used, is what we and others would call a cover charge, to excuse away or to cover up violence imposed by the police officer on the civilian. And so when the police brutalize someone, when they taser somebody, when they use the baton, weaponry in their hands, or they bring them down, and there's a identifiable use of force, they need to have a reason that they could put on paper that says, oh, this is why I had to put hands on them, and this is why I had to use my weapon. And invariably, almost every single time, that excuse that they make up is resisting. So that's why, you always see these videos and say, stop resisting, and they say, I'm not resisting, and they're trying to get a certain script on paper. But it absolutely is a weaponized arresting practice, particularly by the San Jose Police Department, to impose violence on community members, to arrest and take them out of the downtown that they want to look a certain way for certain people. And is often an introduction or the start of a story that leads to serious harm or death of the person. We had a campaign, I guess you could say, for a man in San Jose that we called Almost a Hashtag. And it was for him he was facing a life sentence for, actually it was like similar to what happened in Minneapolis. They said that he had tried to run over a police officer with his vehicle. That's why it felt so deja vu seeing Renee Good's murder on video, because we saw the forensics, the ballistics, the bullet trajectories of how that case played out here locally, where a black man was accused of trying to run over a police officer. But when we looked at the same thing with Renee Good, with the ICE agent, but when we looked at the forensics and the bullet trajectory, same thing. The bullets were shot into the side of the vehicle, not the front. So it took away the excuse that the vehicle was aimed at the person. And secondly, it was found that the vehicle for the person in San Jose was going like 5 miles an hour. So he survived that, and we realized that, and then they charged him with assault on a police officer. And what we realized was that was such a common story that the public doesn't hear about, because the person actually survived. Mm-hmm. So we called it Almost a Hashtag, because we know the names of people that have been killed by police by a hashtag, but there's exponentially more people that are hurt and harmed that had the miracle, and police would probably say the audacity to survive. But those folks aren't getting away, like living their life. They're locked up and they're charged with whatever the police can put on them. The prosecutors will back up police, and resisting arrest is almost always on that docket. And the other thing I'd say, though, in context of the Super Bowl in San Jose, is that also is a long-standing tradition in San Jose of the political class wanting their city and their downtown to look a certain way for certain people, and using police enforcement as a way to curate that downtown. And so resisting arrest has been very commonplace as a charge used. And as everyone here knows, and people like viewing this would get, is that it's racially weaponized. So when they looked at some of the data of use of force and relationship with resisting arrest, they found that in use of force cases in San Jose, 70% of the time I flipped that. In resisting arrest charges, 70% of the time there was a use of force. And that the Latino community was 4 times their rate of being the recipient of that charge than their general demographic. The black community was 5 to 8 times disproportionately charged with that crime versus their general demographic. So it is absolutely a racialized tool by police and prosecutors.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if it's a suspicion. If the pattern continues, then we're going to see more of that in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
With Super Bowl coming, and into future events outside the Super Bowl too that are happening this year. But yeah, and just to draw back to that connection of police and ICE, right? That any kind of encounter like that, like a 148 or any other kind of charges, if someone, if police beat somebody up, if that person is an immigrant or is undocumented, that creates a exponentially higher risk of them having to encounter ICE and federal agencies. So if I could, maybe we could transition a little bit about what can we do, I think a part of this is raising awareness of this, being a voice, kind of like what we're talking about. A lot of the things that happen both in the city and the county in response to ICE are sometimes symbolic and not really pragmatic of how to remove our community members and our loved ones from the actual grips of them, and how to prevent them from getting in those grips. But with that being said, because sometimes if we know the film, I think that's become a cultural norm of what do I do when I'm witnessing this, or what do I do when I'm being targeted. Folks whip out their phone and keep doing that. That's important, but what are some of the other things? What can somebody do, or a loved one do, or a family do if their loved one does have an encounter with ICE, within the next 2 weeks, but just in general as well.
We do have a flyer we created for the first 24 of what to do if your loved one was to get detained by ICE. It's on our website, thefirst24.org. So that shows you a little bit more in depth of what are those first initial next steps of what to do when that person gets picked up. We also have another flyer, I believe, on our website that is in the moment, which is called the raids.
What to do when raids.
Okay, yeah, that's the what to do when raids happen. It just, that one's more in the moment. Of some of the ones that we know is record.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was just saying, I think there's so much. I think one is for us to think about as a community that the Super Bowl might be kind of an anchor way to talk about it, but it is the weeks before, the weeks after, and then there's more later, you know. So like knowing that anytime we like February, Super Bowl February 8th.
Yeah.
So February 9th, this still gonna happen, you know? So like
Yeah.
we gotta stay vigilant that whole time. And we have resources and stuff, but it's one of those where like, you know, like you gotta pull it out when you need to. So it's being vigilant at the moment and stuff, and like which is like for me, like seeing all the videos of the folks in Minnesota and how hyper local organized those streets are. Like it made me think about like, dang, I should go to my neighbors and give them all these things in case they come. Like that's something I could do, you know, like even with, I know that every week we have families who come here and we're seeing them after the fact. And I guess that's one thing, like I guess in, you know, knowing that, hey, you don't have to know this now. You don't have to memorize rates, right? But it's like, okay, shit, if this happens, this is what I know. I know there are people who've experienced this. I know there are folks that I could turn to and stuff. And my neighborhood isn't alone. And then the other thing, too, is I know at some point we were talking about it. It's like, you know, we see a lot of folks who are getting picked up and stuff, but that's not the end of the story. Like, there's so much thing, like, and we know it's not the end of the story because there are people who are home now because we've been able to turn ICE buses around and stuff and literally turn them around, and they're here still fighting their case and stuff. And so there's still that long part of the fight that, you know, really is what we gotta, you know, gear up for. And there's us who can help out with that and support with that. And so it doesn't have to be the end of an ICE pickup is not the end, you know.
If just to echo something that you said there too, like, because we talked about this in the last conversation about like the things that are going to happen within these next 2 weeks are going to have life implications well past these next 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Every sweep, every arrest, every charge, any, you know, immigration encounters is going to last way after the Super Bowl, right? Like, I mean, sometimes, you know, I mean, families deal with cases for years. You know what I mean? Like, this becomes a burden and an obstacle in their life, just a constant threat to their freedom and their unity as a family for potentially years after this encounter. So it's, absolutely. But yeah, I do agree that like we have some information, some resources on what to do when it happens, you know, and it does not stop when someone gets arrested. It does not stop when someone gets picked up by ICE. But I do feel you though, like what you know, that conversation of how do we be preventative, you know, and I think too, like, you know, like that's the hyper local organized. I think that's why we're so critical of like county and city policy and rhetoric, because it's, you know, it's not really doing shit, you know. You know what I mean? It's not like actually stopping anything, you know. So that you know, it becomes all of our responsibilities of how do we do that then, you know.
Andrew, can I ask, like, so we're talking about like, here's some things that you can do, and we have like, we kind of wrote this stuff down and give it names and graphics, but like, what are some specific examples of like what you all have done when someone had called you and said, oh, my loved one got detained? Like, what are the intervention points that a community or family's been able to do?
Yeah, so I think one of the first things we've tried to intervene with is obviously trying to locate the person, to see if they're still here locally. So maybe like at the Blossom Health Center or down the couple cities over, Morgan Hill Center, you know, trying to see, just where they're at and safety purposes, because we know that a lot of people have been have not been able to be found till like a week later, 2 weeks later, you know, and then from there, you know, trying to to figure out if there are any avenues of relief that that person we can fight for that person. So, you know, a lot of folks try to fight for asylum cases. Let's see what else. But yeah, just like asylum case or any visa opportunities for that person. But yeah, you know, that's a little bit more in the future. But I guess just locally here, getting in contact with the family of that person that's detained, you know, to kind of help them, guide them, and guide them through this really scary process that we all don't know. Kind of just going back to like, okay, people say, you know, oh this person got picked up, but that's it. Like that's usually all we hear on the media. You know, they got picked up. Well, that's about it. But you know, there is some next steps that we can continue to help that family. You know, get a little bit more sense of relief. Help them, guide them through this really scary moment of finding their loved one.
Yeah, I remember, you know, like San Mateo County used to take young people from juvenile hall straight to ICE. And like they were, you know, the third in the country to do it. And this was like, you know, 15 years ago. And, you know, Sarait's sister was one of them. But I remember like, you know, there was one family who was like, man, they're going to take our kid and stuff. And so in terms of like specific things to do, like, so back then, so it was like a 48-hour hold since the time you were like, quote, sentenced or ordered released. Mm-hmm. So we would ask the public defender to say, time it, because we will count 48 hours to the minute and wait outside juvenile hall and stuff until, you know, the ICE bus comes, or, you know, because as soon as that minute hits, like that kid should be released. And so we would do that. I remember when the kid did get picked up by ICE, because ICE made that timeline, like we followed them to San Francisco where they took them. So looking for, you know, it's harder, so much harder now to find people. Yeah. You know, back then, like we go, okay, there's San Francisco and stuff, and we knew just from experience that every person who detains a person has the power to release them or not. So, okay, you can't. We got auntie over here, we got mama over here. You know, we will promise that they will appear in court, and stuff, and they have the decision-making power. Okay, if they say no, let me talk to your supervisor, and really not stopping till someone says yes and stuff. Yes, I'll release them to you. Like, and even if we don't know if they have the power or not, like I'm just gonna ask, you know, like, and just being bold that way. Like when we try to find where Eladio was, like it was really that first phone call. He's like, oh, they took me, you know, when we're like, okay, so he was in this prison. We're like, what? Google ICE facility next to Avenal State Prison. Oh, there was this phone number popped up, you know, let's just call him. Let's just see who picks up and stuff. And they didn't know what to do either. Mm-hmm. So we're like, all right, when we were like, can we talk to Eladio? And they're like, they didn't know what to say. And they're like, whoa, hold on. You know, so I think it's just being creative and not being bound by, you know, like
by ICE's rules, because they want to make up their own rules all the time. So why can't we?
Yeah.
That's the way we fight back, you know, making up our own rules against them, because half of the time they don't know what they're doing either.
And their power is reliant on us not trying.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like they're counting on family members to not pursue where their loved one is, the options to get them out, all these kinds of things. So and to be honest too, like that's the same with the criminal courts too. You know what I mean? Like you know, that system relies on us not trying. Like it relies on us not wanting to get involved and fight for our loved ones from the outside. One other thing too, from experience at Debug, if you have a police interaction and your loved one is undocumented or is on some type of visa or something like that, that's definitely something you want to relay to the defense attorney as soon as they get assigned, because that greatly dictates what they should be advocating for in the criminal setting to lower the risk of susceptibility to encounters with ICE or federal agents. That was one other thing I was thinking about too. But
And you see how like even that like it comes full circle of like the lip service from the elected officials versus what's happening like we're talking about resisting arrest, right? And that the danger of that, the physical danger, the legal danger of it, and the misuse of it, and well, I don't know, there's no good use of it, but our local DA, Jeff Rosen, in the wake of George Floyd, all these prosecutors wanted to look a certain way, racially sensitive, after George Floyd, and our DA was the same way. And so he had a whole set of policies called Bend the Arc, which was going to be like for racial justice. And on that list was, he said, we're no longer going to prosecute standalone 148s, because there was just an admission that resisting arrest was a violent weapon of police, and that's where the interactions happened. Like, had George Floyd survived, he would have been charged with that, and so that's what the arrest is. But then you see, like, he didn't stop doing standalone 148s, and unfortunately, we think that's what we're going to see a lot leading up to Super Bowl and FIFA is standalone 148s, because it's easy for them to do. It's so discretionary. And even if there isn't use of force, then they're caught in that trap if there's immigration consequences. And so there's just a complete, not only departure, but contradiction in what the local political class is saying in their position against ICE and Trump versus what their policies are going to do and impact people's real lives here.
yeah.
Can I just add to, like, I think too, like with, this, I think when we think about the Super Bowl or how people are talking about it, it's like, oh, we're containing it in Santa Clara, or it's like, we're going to just, make this little zone and that's where ICE will be. But everyone who is going to have a Super Bowl party somewhere and stuff, like, or a Super Bowl event, that's just as important as this, because it's like, it's the people who could afford the $10,000 tickets who could go there and stuff, and that's not who they're gonna try to, like, because they're out of town, they're the out of town guests, but it's like whoever's doing it at House of Pizza and stuff, like watching the Super Bowl there and stuff, like, that's who we got to worry about and stuff. That's who's gonna catch the 148s and stuff, and all that. So I mean, about 148s, like, it's just, it's, I mean, and let's just not be I think, just to kind of what Roger's point, let's not like get caught up in that it's just going to be ICE doing that stuff, but it is going to be like, if ICE shows you their behavior, they're learning that from the cops. Like, like the Renee Good situation happened with, a lot of our loved ones and stuff here, like, So.
And we will have to have a larger conversation around police and ICE being the same. I think that's like its own conversation, and something that I feel like we see clearly. Like we clearly see the straight line drawn between these two enforcement agencies. In light of, like, talking like political class rhetoric, right? San Jose Mayor Mahan, in the light of Renee Good's murder, praised San Jose PD as exemplary of, this is what good training is, this is what, and in that post, there was no condemnation of what ICE is doing. It was more of a tragedy of, he didn't use the word accident, but that's the insinuation, right? Like, this is just a tragic one-off incident. This is horrible, rest in peace. But San Jose PD, this is why San Jose PD is so great. And I just, this in the spirit of just the dangers that kind of conversation holds from leadership in the city, San Jose PD is, as we know, has killed many people in San Jose, and will be doing ICE's bidding, when they have interactions with immigrants, and that those things are not separate. And the more that we lift up one agency, I just couldn't get over the audacity to be opportunistic over this death, over this murder, that everyone in seemingly is like trying to wrap their heads around and are like grieving a reality that maybe they thought was and is now, coming to terms with what this is. Using that as an opportunity for cop propaganda with SJPD, I think is exemplifies, just how little weight these folks' words have in terms of the realities that vulnerable folks in immigrant communities and people dealing with poverty have to deal with here in San Jose.
I think you were. Oh, sorry.
No, go.
When we saw that post, you were bringing up Quan Green.
Yeah, because it was the same week, probably the same day that the city council, settled with Quan Green for $8 million for the racist cop McNamara shooting him at a La Vix when he was the one trying to de-escalate a situation. And so that culture, that SJPD culture is based on racism and stuff. So they're the most primed to be at ICE and stuff. And so, audacity is the word. We have a family thread and stuff of like the families who lost someone to police violence, and they like audacity to then, but the other thing too, it's like, when Trump and JD Vance and Kristi Noem told a whole different story of like what happened with Renee Good and and what's going on in Minnesota, that's exactly what Mahan's doing too. But then it's in the guise of like, him being this Democrat mayor or Democrat-looking mayor and stuff in San Jose. So it's just on brand of like how, disconnected these political leaders are and stuff from from the reality that we're really seeing. And then, 2 days ago, that horrible shooting and killing of that young man in San Jose in broad daylight and stuff, like, that's the exemplary police department and stuff that... and
it's just wild to have seen that, like, and all the response from the police department wasn't accountability or anything about the loss of a life. It was saying something, the officer that I think, got injured, like what he was saying about looking after his dogs or something. I think it was the quote from the mayor. Mm-hmm. He was concerned about his dogs. And it was just this kind of heroic layering over him. But meanwhile, we all saw like the execution of a guy in broad daylight on Julian Street, with just riddled with bullets, like, and literally run over. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a term that literal. Like, he was the cop accelerated and ran over him. No braking, nothing, like accelerated through him. And it was wild, like, I'd never seen anything like that. Yeah. And the fact that no one said anything about it, there was no like sanctity of life or anything like that. They just applauded the officers. And then the thing that was wild in connection to Minneapolis was what JD Vance and Noem and all these folks were saying when they watched the same video we all saw Renee Good getting killed, they said, "Oh, well, that was a weaponization of the vehicle." And then you see locally here a vehicle literally made into a weapon, a lethal weapon, and there's no talk of it. Like, you want to talk about that process of making a vehicle a weapon, like, that is the example of it. Like, and there's no mention of it. So it's wild how they could, I think the term is gaslight, like, from Minneapolis, but also local here. Locally here.
Sorry, because I think for me, speaking on behalf of the white delegation, I'm fine. Because there's a lot of upset, like, white people in America right now, especially in relationship to witnessing Renee Good getting shot point blank, who is a white woman, and was an observer, right? And I think there's a lot of outrage with that among white folks, and the wrestling with, like, what is this, and I'm gonna use this opportunity to, like, encourage people to stop saying I can't believe what America has become, because it has always been this way. When you realize it might be a different timeline, but I think the encouragement for non-impacted people who are watching these things is that same outrage and energy that we have around watching ICE, something that has been incredibly documented, between LA, Chicago, Minneapolis, all over the country. We just see constantly video after video after video of them doing outrageous shit. I want folks who are not impacted to keep that same energy and realize the similarities, the connection, the like just linear thought of how this is related to policing on a local level all around the country, including in San Jose. The same way you spin a story, Chrissy Noem spin a story, is the same way the police chief in San Jose will spin a story, the same way Mayhem will spin a story, the same kind of violence, the same kind of arbitrary choice of who gets it and who doesn't, are all connected, and so there, just the encouragement for anyone that's watching is that there is no, like, we're going to be outraged about ICE, but we need safer communities with more police.
Right.
Yeah.
Though that is an internal contradiction that you are wrestling with. and so my encouragement is to dive deeper into that and to follow the lead of those who intrinsically already know that connection. That's my TED talk for that part. I know we're running up on time. It's 12:30 right now.
That's a good way to end the podcast.
Maybe that's it. Okay. Yeah. Well, I appreciate everybody for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah.